Hi guys, it's Matt here from MCS-books, and today I'm going to be doing a bookish love letter video. Now this video is kind of going to be a bit like a recent reads slash a book haul. It's framed under the bookish love letters, and that for me, in a way, they are almost the same as love letters in that they are shared between loved ones, or they are shared because of a love for specific things. So the first group of books, the first selection of books is probably like the biggest, is a group of books that have recently come to me, or books that I had bought specifically to give to Davide when he came here this past weekend just gone. Like, he was here for about 5 days. He has now left, unfortunately, but I still have some books to remember him by, I guess, for the until the next time I see him at least. So let's just, I guess, get into it. The first 3 books are books that Davide gave to me. One of them he bought with the intention for giving it to me, but then he wanted to read it first because he also wanted to read it. The second book is a book that he's had for a while and knew that I wanted to read it, so he bought it over. And then the third book is a book that he bought for himself, yet thought that I would appreciate it, or at least I saw him reading it and I was like, oh, that sounds really good. So the first book, the one that he bought for me specifically, was A Natural History of Dragons by Brennan. I've literally wanted to read this book for so long. I mean, the cover is absolutely gorgeous, and I think it's just going to be a really interesting kind of fantasy read. It's laid out like a memoir by Lady Trent, as far as I'm aware, and it's just basically an exploration of dragons, as if she's going on this sort of worldwide search for better understanding dragons. That's what I've engaged from it. I've heard lots of good things about it on BookTube from various SFF readers, so yes, I am very excited to get to this one. Davide said he did really enjoy it. He said there are a few issues that he had with it, and he'd be interested if I had similar issues, but most of all, I'm just glad to begin this series, and now he and I are going to have to collect the entire collection because they just all look so wonderful. So then the second book that he owned, and I think he's owned it for a while, he's owned it at least before he and I met. I've wanted to read it for a while, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And yes, I read The People in the Trees first. Last summer, oh no, maybe not last summer, sort of end like September-ish, I think, September time perhaps, last year. And I really loved it, and I really want to get to this one, which is massive, and what's nice is that Davide has left tabs in it, so I can try to figure out what they actually mean, what the tabs represent. I'm assuming it's just maybe favourite lines or something, but you know, it's like he's talking to me when I'm reading it. This book, I don't actually know. I have tried to ignore everybody's like wrap-ups or reviews of this book because I wanted to know as little as possible, because that's what happened with The People in Trees. I had a vague understanding of what it was going to be about, but didn't know that much. Went into it and ended up really loving it. So I wanted to do the same for this one. As far as I'm aware, it's about 4 friends or something. And then there's like a sort of a secret between them, or one of them has a secret. I'm not entirely sure, but it does sound really fantastic, and I trust Yanagihara's writing, and even though it is massive, I think I would really enjoy it, and Davide seems to think I would enjoy it too. So yes. And then the final one, this is one that he picked up for himself, and he ended up enjoying it more than he thought he would, at least. And then he took a picture of it one time, so it showed that he was reading it, and I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And it's Social Physics by Pentland. It says how social networks can make us smarter. What I liked most about this book, when I saw that he was reading it, I was like, oh, you know what, it's basically his interests, the physics, and my interests, the social sciences, kind of thrown together into one book. And I really like that idea. I like that concept, and I like the fact that this book kind of embraces both our studies and our academic inclinations, so I am very much excited. Again, I don't know too much. I think it does cover sort of big data aspects that is Davide's forte and Davide's strength, but then I think it sort of discusses how we need to embrace the social impact and the social sciences within the study of big data, which is kind of like what I do, at least. and I think it could be really interesting. Well, Davide has also dog-eared some pages, which I guess are bits that he found most interesting or wanted to remember. So I'll be interested to see whether the bits that I find most interesting are the same bits that he does, or whether we find like different bits interesting. But yeah, I don't know, it was really lovely. So the next group of books are ones that I kind of seen and bought for him. Now the first one is The Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. So I've got these two editions here. This edition is actually Davide's edition, which I took from him I think like before the Book of Dust was released, because he had read it in the hopes of reading the trilogy before Book of Dust, and he wanted to collect this group of editions because he hadn't read the trilogy in English yet. He had only read it in Italian. So he had finished reading this, and I wanted to do the same. So I read this, and then I ended up getting Subtle Knife and Amber Spyglass from the library in Sweden. And then he never ended up reading the Subtle Knife and the Amber Spyglass because he only wanted these editions, and it was a bit expensive at the time, so he never kind of got around to it. So then I read Book of Dust and whatnot. So then a few days before Davide arrived, I went into a charity shop and I found this edition of The Northern Lights, and I also found the same edition for the Subtle Knife and the Amber Spyglass. So I bought all three and gave the second two to him to take home so he can finally read them. And I thought it would be nice if we have a sort of our own grand collection of the His Dark Materials trilogy, because I have the original trilogy covers somewhere in one of my grandparents' lofts, and then he would like to collect this edition, and then we both of us together have this edition. He also has the Italian edition, but I really like these covers for the books, although I'm not sure they're up to everyone's taste. But at the end of the day, they were £1 each, so £3 obviously, from a charity shop. Couldn't complain, and I hope that he will enjoy it. Well, he's already almost finished a Subtle Knife, so I know he will enjoy the rest, but hopefully then he can read the Book of Dust at last, and I'm so desperate to see what he thinks of the Book of Dust, because we all know my opinion. So then the second book I bought him was 4321 by Paul Auster, and he has taken that, even though it's massive, he has taken it because he really wanted to read it, and I found the hardback edition for £1, which was incredible. So he has used that and taken that back. And then I also bought him Empire of Dragons by Valerio Massimo Manfredi. He has read some of Manfredi's books before, but in Italian, because these books are translated from the Italian. However, I saw this one and it made me think of Davide, because it is Italian and it's sort of fantasy-esque / historical fiction, and I thought he would enjoy it. So I bought it for him. He didn't have enough room after 4321 to put it in his backpack, so he's going to have to save this for another day, but then I think I'm going to end up reading it first, because I kind of also want to read this one and see how it is. And then the last books are books that Davide had borrowed from me and kind of returned back. So these books are ones that, I thought that he would enjoy. The first one is The People in the Trees, which I thought he would enjoy because he enjoyed A Little Life, and I really enjoyed this one. And he did end up enjoying it. I think he had like a few issues with it, but they're kind of the same issues with me. Ultimately, the ending of this book isn't that great. The characters deserved a little bit more in the ending that they weren't given. So yeah, that one. So then the next one that I let him borrow was Luka and the Fire of Life, and he's returned them back to me. I just really love this book, and he really loved it too. It's really simple, and it kind of is magical realism, but it explores it in a way that kind of relates to like video games and stuff. And I don't know, it was just a really wonderful tale that is quite original, but yet follows the very comforting plot lines of any classic children's tale. So this was just really wonderful, and Davide ended up really enjoying it, and I knew he would. I've been telling him about it for years to read. Well, I say I've been telling him for years. I haven't known him for years. I've been telling Davide to read this for a long time now, so he's finally got around to it, and I'm glad. And then the last one was Galileo's Dream by Kim Stanley Robinson. He didn't enjoy it so much. I didn't enjoy it so much. It's sci-fi. I thought he would be kind of interested because it explores Galileo, but then he has a bit of issue with Kim Stanley Robinson, the fact that he does some research but not enough research, or he makes things up which are a bit wrong. And I don't know, even when I read this book, and not even having anywhere close to a physics sort of background, there were things in here which I couldn't even get on board with. It was just too much. I don't even know. I think the author had a very strong idea of what he wanted, and he managed to get some science to make it happen, but the rest he just relied on basically fantasy or either the reader not knowing. It just ended up being not that great, to be honest, but I was intrigued by Davide's opinion of it, and yeah, his opinion wasn't too great either, so I was like, okay, I felt better in myself then for that. But Davide does really like Galileo, so I thought this would be a book that would at least pique his interest, and it did. He did want to read it. It wasn't like I forced it upon him. He did want to read it. He was just disappointed, but as was I on that one. So the next group of books are 3 books that I bought from from Lisnajan, the bookshop in Tiverton. When I made the video about Devon and community and the literary scene around this area, it was set in that bookshop, and I bought 2 books from them, and one of them was from the author who was also at the event but who I didn't have time to interview. She sent me a copy of her book so that I could enjoy it and just to embrace the Devonshire community. So the first one I bought from the bookshop was Slightly Foxed. It is a literary journal, and it talks about books that are either out of print or books that have gone under the radar, like a lot of the publishers' backlisted books that kind of nobody really knows about anymore. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, anybody can submit to this journal to be published, and obviously not everyone will. However, because of that, some of the essays within this are stronger than the others, and there were some that I really didn't enjoy, but the ones that I did enjoy were really interesting. But what I liked most is that it's introduced me to books that I wouldn't have been introduced to before, and there are a few books in here that I am really excited to try to track down or to hopefully read one day. And what's nice about this journal in particular, or the people behind this journal, is that they're very aware that they're talking about books that are out of print or are very hard to come by, so you can actually write into them and they can try to find the books for you, and then they'll post it to you and you'll pay them. I don't know how much you have to pay them, but I think that's just a really nice touch and a really nice service that they include for their magazine. And they do then sort of publish books that haven't been published for years. I think what they do is they take one book from each edition and then they republish it under their own Foxed brand, which I just think is really nice. And yes, so I really enjoyed this one, really loved reading it. The second one I bought was Among the Olive Groves by Chrissie Parker. She is a local author. You saw me interview her. She was part of the discussion on what it means to be living in Devon and why we value the literary community here. So this is her book. She talked about it there. She's published it independently, and it is a World War II story set in Zakynthos in Greece. And she sort of summed it up quite well. It just tells a story from World War II that I had never heard of before, so I'm really interested in that. I don't tend to read World War II stories because I get quite bored of just hearing the same stuff that we learned in school. Like, it was overdone in school. That was my issue. It was overdone from a very particular perspective. So being able to read a story from a different perspective is really exciting, and one that I can't wait to get into. And then the last book is from Lucy Hay, or LV Hay here, and she has written The Other Twin. What I liked about Lucy was that when she was talking at the talk at the bookshop, she had a very strong voice, and she was very passionate about kind of the choices that people are put into when they're young and how they have to sort of embrace these choices and really consider, and that we don't give young people enough credit for the choices that they do then make, as if they're too young to really make that choice when they're not. This one isn't so much to do about choices, but she does have a new book that's out now, I think, just now, called Proof Positive, and that's a sort of story that explores a teenager who's discovered that she's pregnant and then has to make the decision of what to do. And I think each part of the book explores a different choice that she can make in regards to her pregnancy. This one is a thriller about a girl who falls to her death, and her sister then wants to try to figure out the true story behind why her sister fell to her death. It's set in Brighton, and it explores kind of like the dark underside of teenagers having to face coming to terms with their identity whilst falling into peer pressure and everything. And I think I will enjoy this. It's not like a book I have read before, much like Among the Olive Groves. These aren't exactly genres that I tend to pick up myself, but hearing that, I think there's something different about when you hear an author actually speak about their book or read directly from their book and being within the room. So it's nice to have this sort of like these Devon love letters of people who I've met and who I enjoyed reading from their books, and I can like learn more about their perspective whilst understanding, whilst supporting my local community and everything. So I am super excited to get to these books. And yeah, that's kind of the books I've got today that I've spoken about. Of course, I've read some of them, I haven't read all of them. So let me know your thoughts about them, and let me know if any of these have piqued your interest. And let me know any books that you think are bookish love letters between you, your friends, or you and your loved ones, or you and your local community. You can always like this one if you enjoyed it, and as always, you can subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.